To set people's hearts ablaze with words, you must first choose those words correctly, which means knowing their meanings. We don't often think about it, but we don't just pull them out of thin air. We get them, one way or another, from a dictionary, from a book, where their original meaning is established. How do you usually picture a dictionary maker? As a quiet, humble, reclusive grey mouse? Far from it. Actually, it's quite the opposite. This is a story of a true superhero who wasn't quite accepted by his peers. To this day in Russia, there is no monument to him, not a single memorial plaque, but practically every Russian knows the surname Ozhegov and this very book, a dictionary of the Russian language, which formed and solidified our modern speech. In fact, Ozhegov himself erected this imperishable monument to himself.
This is the house where Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov was born on September 9th, 1900. Perhaps he ran out of this door to the street to play with the neighborhood kids.
In Soviet times it was somehow more often written that he came from a working class family. They remembered that his ancestors were also Demidov serfs, but on a different side. His mother was the grandniece of a philologist who was a priest. A classic Russian, yes, working class, but very educated family.
The Ozhegov family came to Kuvshinovo for factory work. They were invited by the factory owner, Kuvshinova, after whom the city is named.
Father Ivan Ozhegov, a technical talent, a process engineer at the Kalinin paper mill. One thing is for sure, this family certainly knows how to work with its hands. The Ozhegovs are sure their history began in Peter's time. Legend says Akinfi Demidov, founder of the Ural mining industry, tried to eliminate evidence during an inspection. He ordered a basement flooded with workers who were either counterfeiting coins or doing something else. But one man swam out against all odds.
Our family somehow thought that one of those surfaced workers was exactly the one who was named Ozhegov. All of these people were from either former bandits or they were runaway peasants. When Ivan Grigorievich passed away from this life, he had 13 children, and every single one of them received a higher education thanks to the Demidovs. They were the ones who financed this entire endeavor. Our family has, I believe, completely justified that financial support.
The technical intelligentsia lived in this house, and there was a special atmosphere in this very house. Gorky, the famous Russian writer, was a frequent guest of the Ozhegov family.
There's a city legend. It was here Gorky began his first story and chose his pseudonym, although official sources insist it was in a different place. In any case, the walls of this house are so imbued with words and creativity, they leave their mark on a future linguist.
He ran around, he grew up, he settled down, his own particular worldview was established. And it was here that this worldview began to acquire certain defining features, and the initial moments of his future profession emerged.
Meanwhile, din kezej, azi Gisisa, the intelligent, restless Sergei Ozhegov remains an ordinary yard boy. One of his favorite pastimes is playing sports games outside. He doesn't suspect yet that very soon he'll have to part with his familiar routine. Ahead lies a move that will change his life forever.
Right before the Civil War, they moved to Petersburg. Ivan Ivanovich and his father were given posts at Gosnak in Petersburg. There, they received a large apartment on Fontanka. That's where the boys grew up and finished their gymnasium studies. A funny photograph of my grandfather has been preserved where he's already in the senior classes of the gymnasium, but not the very last ones. And his broken cap's visor is bent back like that. It turns out for gymnasium students, bending the visor was, a kind of demonstration of defiance.
He wasn't a mere desk jockey like we imagine scientists, right? He was a bit of a rebel, a mischievous kind of guy.
1917. Ozhegov is 17 and he decides to live on his own. He moves in with his mother's relatives. New surroundings, new home, and it holds the memory of Alexander Pushkin, one of the future linguists' ancestors, a theologian, was friends with the great writer. They dreamed of uniting people through the Russian language, but back then, only French was commonly spoken. It seemed Ozhegov, with such a heritage, had no other path but to become a man of words. Looking ahead, we thought he will still be linked to Alexander Sergeyevich becoming the compiler of this huge dictionary of Pushkin's language. But more on that a little later.
The year 18, he's a student at Petersburg University and he volunteers to fight. A very intelligent young man. In all the photographs, this intelligence, the softness of Ozhegov's character, it's visible in his face, in his manners.
Sergei Ivanovich joined the Red Army. He was a member of the left socialist revolutionaries. Many honest people made this very same decision because truly their belief was that the nation had to progress and needed to follow a different path. Certainly the lack of a constitution, the absence of these fundamental basic freedoms, freedoms that we have become so accustomed to today that we barely even appreciate them, but in those times they were simply not available to us.
He had a brilliant military career. Imagine, the guy's 22, he'd already seen combat. He had every prospect of being a military man. For 4 years, from 18, I believe, to 22, he fought, and he fought very actively.
For Ozhegov, it was a perfectly logical step. Firstly, it was a working class family, indeed. Secondly, well, apparently he had certain convictions as to why he should do it.
His decision to embark on this path was entirely conscious. However, the Civil War turned out to be a very difficult trial. He is offered the opportunity to attend a military academy. He is a capable commander, but he makes the decision not to continue the war, but to devote his time to language.
Ozhegov forever buries the hatchet of war for the pen, for it is known what he has written cannot be cut out with an axe. The Grey Russian word is more enduring, and now it is precisely this word that is the main weapon of the future linguist in the fight against all enemies.
When he chooses a university, specifically the study of language, he realizes that with all the changes in the country and transformations in people's lives, his true place is right here.
The period of the 20s, yes, a time of great change. This very feeling of change, including in science, was in the air. A surge of avant-garde poetry, a surge of Russian avant-garde in art, and in science, in the humanities, in philology, it was a truly amazing time. Language was changing. Every day new words appeared quite naturally because realities were changing, reality was shifting.
Naturally, this is not just a time for acquisitions. Any war, any changes, a risk to lose the Russian word itself.
There's a risk of primitivizing, of losing our language because the people, the language bearers are leaving, and the language bearers are usually the most decent, the most loving, the strongest people. They also cannot stand aside from events, so they die first.
A new element was changing, was being born right before their eyes. They witnessed these linguistic transformations and were able to observe them. They practically lived through a period, yes, a breaking point of eras. Ozhegov, for instance, had truly excellent teachers. Lev Shcherba, Viktor Vinogradov, are absolutely brilliant philologists, truly brilliant linguists.
Petrograd University becomes for him not just an alma mater, but also the place where Ozhegov's rebellious spirit fully emerges. Perhaps it was, Diane, this note of rebellion, which resonated in him since childhood, that ultimately played a key chord in the future career of the daredevil. Together with other future philologists and linguists, Sergei often staged what we now call performances. By the way, such a word is still not in Ozhegov's dictionary, despite the revisions.
We have a clipping from a St. Petersburg newspaper from that time, and it says that a strange funeral procession was seen on the streets of Petrograd. The mourners were singing and the deceased himself was singing. What I mean is they put on such a show, it was almost exactly like in Jolly Fellows. Those were fun student years, but that didn't stop me from pursuing linguistics, and it didn't prevent me from specifically and creating what, in essence, was ultimately brought into being.
In these same years, the future linguist found his love. And no, they didn't meet in a library, but at the dentist's office. You can't call this anything but fate. His wife would accompany him for the rest of his life. They
My grandmother was a stunningly beautiful woman. Many men courted her. And I also had a Savati Mikhalic from my mother's side, yes. And whenever a beautiful woman entered, he would play on the piano, and the rifle glitters in the sun. So, Tasheta. Whenever my grandmother came in, it was always like that. She was a very interesting woman, a philologist and a teacher as well. She was involved in the upbringing of homeless children.
In the early 30s, almost half of the Soviet Union's population was illiterate, unable to read or write, completely uneducated. The nation launched mass education. Dictionaries were key. Where to find the current one? There's a small one, Kuja, of course, but specifically for peasants, to help them orient themselves after moving to city life. Another work is a huge dictionary of literary language. Clearly, it won't be useful without preparation. An intermediate version needs to be created, and Ozhegov is being brought in to create something similar. His mentor is Dmitry Ushakov.
The language changed literally before our eyes, literally in just a couple, in some decade. By the 30s, such changes, yes, these turbulent ones had already accumulated, they had already become the norm. Ushakov, naturally, he clearly grasped the need to establish a linguistic standard one way or another. And his dictionary wasn't designed for a mere 5 or 10 years. It was truly intended for a considerably longer span of time.
The basis of fighting illiteracy is precisely understanding the norm. It's impossible to learn a language if you don't understand its ideal. And that's recorded in the dictionary. In fact, the dictionary dictates our language to us.
Grandfather has always regarded Ushakov with immense respect and love throughout his life. A portrait of Ushakov always stands on his desk. It's a large team, and indeed, Grandpa, they called him the driving force because he was very active and accomplished a great deal. Ushakov even goes as far as to offer him co-authorship. This was something that had never happened with anyone else. However, the grandfather firmly believes that a student cannot possibly be a co-author to his own teacher. So he declares that he will create his very own dictionary and strictly following his own rules.
Another interesting coincidence. Today, one would say Ozhegov's work on Ushakov's dictionary was, as if, destined by fate, because this book is directly connected to the factory in Kuvshinovo, where his father once worked.
The first edition of Sergei Ozhegov's Russian language dictionary was printed on paper, made right here at this very factory. What a reason, right, when strange coincidences happen.
Sergei Ozhegov has been residing in Moscow since 1936, who combines his work on this monumental dictionary with his teaching responsibilities. From 1939 onwards, Sergei served as a research associate at the Institute of Language and Writing of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR. During their collaborative efforts, Ushakov proposed to Ozhegov that at some future time he should undertake the task of revising this monumental work and, indeed, somewhat condense it so that the dictionary could be utilized by everyone.
We need to create a dictionary, one that's more dynamic, more acceptable for people, all in a single volume, so it can be used in a more mobile way, just like this.
And this is very important. The idea is for this dictionary to be not just in every school, in every library. It would be great if it were also in every home. Because, you know, a 4-volume set, or say a 17-volume set, is a luxury.
But all grand plans are shattered by the outbreak of war. There's no time for preserving any eloquence.
During the Great Patriotic War, Ozhegov was to evacuate with the institute. He remained in Moscow by his own choice, guarding the institute.
As a man with military service experience, he makes a clear decision that when the Germans cross the border, they go and sign up for the militia. Why? Well, simply because it's the right thing to do.
Many people left, but he did not. He remained. He worked at the institute, continuing his linguistic research. And of course, they helped him to endure these many shocks. He lost so many people, so many of his relatives.
Ushakov, the entire editorial team, and Ozhegov's family are evacuated. Sergei himself is passionate about creating a new dictionary, but the first blow, Ushakov dies during the evacuation. He has to carry the entire burden alone.
He is trying to contact those who have left. He tries, we even have the correspondence saved in Telegram where he asks them to reply, saying he's all alone, and then he realizes that no one is interested in this as much as he is, and he continues to work independently.
Sergei Ivanovich very firmly believed that Moscow would never be captured. Victory would be ours. And despite the fact that during the Great Patriotic War in Moscow he had no food, just like many other people, no water, no heating, he was, I think, a very determined and responsible man. And the man, he survived and he accomplished what he was truly meant to do.
Sometimes, to avoid freezing at home, he climbs onto the wardrobe. It's warmer near the ceiling and he works in such conditions. Another tragedy literally knocks the linguist off his feet. In besieged Leningrad, almost all his relatives perish. Only his brother's child Natasha remains. At the first opportunity, Ozhegov takes her in and raises her as his own.
Her grandfathers searched for her for a very long time because unfortunately her relatives had not preserved any records of where she had been evacuated. But Natasha was eventually found and adopted, and she immediately became the successor of his important work with the Russian language.
This is without a doubt his profound and inherent humanity. Everyone remembered him as a truly exceptionally well-mannered and cultured person who never, not once was rude and never ever insulted or offended anyone.
You just said that even in Nassau, even in the most difficult times, he found his zen. It's a good thing that phrase still isn't in modern dictionaries. And even all the decisions, the mortal threat, don't distract Ozhegov from the main thing, from this book, from its creation. Although sometimes he was engaged in completely different, no less important activities.
Can you imagine it? Moscow, constant hunger, these air raids and bombings, and he participated in the civilian militias that protected Moscow, meaning if bombs were dropped there, he was putting them out. So he was actively involved in this kind of work.
The house on Smolenka, which became a true home for Sergei Ivanovich after moving to Moscow from Petersburg, his home where he wrote the dictionary, where he survived the war, where Natasha arrived, brought from besieged Leningrad. This is practically his true home.
To his work, to the institute, is just a short walk. Every single day he walks along this route. Though in the war years, the educational institution was abolished. There were no employees, everyone was in evacuation, but Ozhegov still constantly keeps an eye on what's happening inside.
Anna Egorovna was with him, our constant and beloved Niura. Niura was telling me back then that she was walking right here, exactly to the bakery, and she met some soldiers. She says, I asked them, tell me boys, we are not going to surrender Moscow, are we? They replied, no matter, we will not surrender it. And she says, I felt so calm immediately. Staying here was dangerous, but people made the decision to defend the city to the last. The grandfather said that if anything happened, he could take up a rifle.
Ironically, the only award Ozhegov received was a medal for Moscow's defense, certainly not for his dictionary.
It's quite interesting that during the war years, work on the Russian language is still being done, right? Well, Anna Akhmatova, when she said in her poem, we will preserve your Russian speech, great Russian word, right? We will carry you free and pure and give you to our grandchildren, save you from captivity. This work on, it seems to me, on the word during the war years, this holds such great significance. It's of national importance.
My grandpapa compiles a dictionary of living language, the language spoken today, here and now, right? That's why his table is always piled with cards. That's from my childhood memories. Cards with words written on them. His morning begins with reading the newspaper. From it, he notes down words that might be interesting and enter the language. So he specifically studies how language changes over time. And I remember that if Anna Yegorovna disturbs the scientific mess on the table, Grandpa shouts, "What barbarism!"
This is painstaking work requiring, it's a whole feat. So you understand that one must also be skilled. Do this job without annoyance, love it, though it's quite monotonous.
Let's just imagine then that I take 100 index cards and they contain words, right? So we are required to provide a full explanation of what this specific word means, list its grammatical categories, and we absolutely must indicate the proper stress, right? And then we must provide examples from works of fiction, specifying exactly where we took those particular examples from.
These are scientists' qualities: perseverance, the ability and readiness to painstakingly, for a very long time, solve their scientific problem.
I can just imagine how many dictionaries, literary works Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov had to come through to give such a precise definition. You know, like Mayakovsky said, you exhaust 1,000 tons of verbal ore for the sake of a single word. When you read Ozhegov's dictionary, you look at the interpretation of a word and you're amazed at how simple, clear and beautiful it is.
He felt the music of the Russian language, its music and its context. The specific nature of the Russian language is that it's very much alive, possessing an incredible wealth of shades and nuances, which cannot always be fully conveyed into foreign languages. Well, for instance, Nabokov in his time struggled for a very long time to find an equivalent for the Russian word poshlost. There is simply no such concept.
Of course, the war certainly left its mark, and that included the development of the Russian language, because foreign words started to come in. It became very urgent to cleanse this language of foreign words that were not inherent to its nature.
And he showed that the Russian language is priceless, always priceless, and especially during the Great Patriotic War. If you take away a people's language, there will be no people.
Ozhegov not only, as it were, preserved the Russian language, but he is also, as it were, the founder of a new direction in modern Russian studies. The task that Ozhegov faced was to adapt the Russian language to the contemporary reality that was present at the time. There were many new modern words that appeared, such as revolutions, or I don't know, terms like socialism, and everything that was connected with that specific socialist culture. All of this, you see, was Ozhegov's main objective.
The war is ending, but there is no work on the dictionary. It will see the light only in 1949.
When, after the war, he submitted the dictionary's manuscript, he was then asked to list co-authors. To this, he firmly stated that he had completed this extensive work entirely on his own and that he had not received any official assignment for this project from the Academy of Sciences, which was considered quite unpleasant for those who, well, somehow laid claim to co-authorship.
What makes it so wonderfully beautiful? It's relevant. At the moment the dictionary is released, it's always relevant. Opening it, we see the standard, fixed for a 20-year period, so to speak. It remains relevant. Then a new edition is made, and they work again.
It's also crucial to prevent the language from being polluted with jargon, profanity, and other devalued words that in reality hold no actual worth. Achieving this is quite challenging, as it was precisely during Ozhegov's era that such terms became widely accepted and commonly used, and at this point, moral and ethical standards inevitably come into play. Are you ready to let this word become part of everyday use? Are you ready to commit it to paper, to record it in a dictionary, for future generations to use? Ozhegov was not ready for such a development, so these words are still not found there.
Until a certain point, profanity as such was absolutely not used in socialized communities, not at all. It went beyond the bounds of simple communication. That is, it was probably like a gypsy's curse, right?
Something like that. That's why people avoided it.
The use of profanity becomes widespread after the 1960s following the rehabilitation processes. People are returning from the camps, and oddly enough, among the intelligentsia, it becomes quite fashionable to say, "I've done my time." And what does this "I've done my time" actually demonstrate? That I smoke and use such foul language. These are the things that are slowly starting to creep into our lives, just like any kind of leprosy. This constant swearing begins to take hold of more and more of our society's layers.
If a writer is allowed to express himself in such a sophisticated manner, then why shouldn't a plumber also be able to speak in that same way, using the very language of high society?
To yield to society or to preserve the language's original richness, Ozhegov chooses the latter. Indeed, until a word is fixed in a dictionary, it's not officially recognized.
This is a fundamentally prescriptive dictionary, where speech culture is paramount. It's designed to solve current practical tasks and demonstrate a certain level of speech culture.
It started for him after the dictionary, his dictionary became popular. The fact is, my grandfather was completely rejected by academic society, right? He was, well, just completely outside the system.
They were told off for words too. From the church environment, which were considered a clear sign of religious delusion. For example, in his Ozhegov dictionary, published in 1949, many of his critics were quite troubled by words such as iconostasis and apocalypse. There was a certain comrade, Mr. Filin, who was also a brilliant philologist and linguist. He firmly believed that such words should not be included.
And where are the Marxist-Leninist views? And it was not an easy task. He was criticized for his handling of this lexicon. A single word can be interpreted in many ways, but he, as Filin wrote, had an objectivist positive interpretation. Sergei Ivanovich was born in 1900. He represents a generation for whom faith is a natural state.
Ozhegov skillfully defends his dictionary, though his enemies find things to criticize. Right on the very first page is the word abbot. They ask him, why is it needed? An abbot is the head of a Catholic monastery in France, a Catholic priest. And Ozhegov quite rightly responds, how can one possibly understand the sentence, a letter in defense of peace was signed by so-and-so the abbot? But this word is absolutely essential in everyday use, it's needed, not to mention the fact that it frequently appears in works of fiction. How then will you comprehend a novel, once you've read it, where this word appears without its most fundamental meaning?
So, the word still remains in this dictionary.
My grandfather was never a member of the Communist Party, which also didn't quite fit the system. Because of this, he interpreted some words perhaps not entirely correctly. They constantly assigned people to him who were supposed to monitor his work in that respect, but he didn't mind.
By the way, regarding foreign language words, Ozhegov was precisely the one they tried to blame. There you go. There's an abbreviation and other things like that. And Ozhegov writes about the fact that in situations where a change is possible, is needed, and the word is truly at the same level of usage, it's even in the dictionary. But forgive me, an abbreviation is difficult to replace with anything.
All dictionaries are criticized, yes, but he published a very challenging dictionary, to put it mildly, for the country at that time. We understand that in a period when, of course, any linguistic problem is undoubtedly also politicized, as we understand, there was a lot of criticism, and it was very harsh. If we read articles from that period concerning the dictionary, these are very hurtful words, very harsh, very severe. Actually, they could have cost him his political freedom and his life, sadly. It proved true. These words remain in our active vocabulary.
Sergei Ozhegov encounters not just dictionary criticism, but other quite unpleasant issues.
Among the good academics, I can recall Lysenko, because he said at the Congress, thou friends, academics, each of us has Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov's dictionary on our tables. Don't we believe our teacher deserves the title of Doctor of Sciences? They said, oh, all right, he deserves it. The whole point is my grandpa couldn't spare the time to defend his thesis, sadly. And that's just how things turned out. So he never got his degree. But he felt he didn't need to do it. It wasn't for him. He was involved in something completely different.
Of course, he was very worried, and the dictionary's criticism was hard for him. But he never once stooped, never once lowered himself to vulgar public debates, to any hysterical outbursts, no attacks. Even though he cried, it was so painful for him to read it all.
However it may be, everything passes. And then the critics fall silent. Where are their articles? Where are their scientific works? But Ozhegov's are right here. I understand how difficult it was for him. He served the language, he served the word, And that's why everything worked out for him.
Actually, the dictionary is only part of his work with Russian. At the same time, Ozhegov creates much that is useful.
And after the war, Sergei Ivanovich established a small private office, which, as they would say in modern terms today, was a consultation service where workers could come and get advice and guidance on how to properly draft a formal proposal or what this or that particular word meant.
This is simply the reference service of the Institute of the Russian Language. What is it called today? Gramota.ru. This idea itself belongs to Sergei Ivanovich. And then, by analogy, similar reference services began to appear in departments of other universities.
A question arose from a proofreader, colleagues argued. For instance, they'd write asking how to do it right. Everyone answered, both private and legal entities.
There was a time when there was very great interest in Russian fiction and people read many newspapers and magazines.
People are interested in things, disagree with some, want to dispute others. I need to talk to someone about it.
What's more, reasons for debate are only increasing. The Linguist publishes Speech Culture, a popular science journal that asks, how should one write and speak correctly? It seems like a niche publication for philologists, but it captivates the entire country. Such work, by the way, has strategic importance.
Very often, especially during particularly challenging times for the state, it becomes absolutely essential to keep a close watch on everything that's happening with the culture of speech. And we, incidentally, are witnessing this firsthand, because what transpired from the late 80s right up to the good middle of the 2000s, it effectively washed away the high style of language. High style simply vanished. And when there's no high style, the neutral takes its place. And what comes right after that? That's already a lowered conversational style.
Ozhegov introduced essays as a genre, yes, this kind of scientific research. He also established it as a genre. That's why many people grew up simply out of curiosity, reading interesting things about language, about individual words. He also made a significant contribution to popularizing what was very specific linguistic knowledge. These were popular science magazines. Absolutely anyone could subscribe to them for home delivery and read these fascinating articles on language.
This combined effort combats illiteracy. Ozhegov also works on other dictionaries for other peoples, so their assimilation can be faster and calmer.
The most important task he solved was increasing literacy among the population, that is, moving away from illiteracy. Based on this Ozhegov dictionary, national dictionaries were created for the peoples who were part of the Soviet Union. And can you imagine what a titanic amount of work was done and what a powerful leap was made in the development of those republics that were still in a feudal stage of their development, right? And they skipped over what you might call a social system, like capitalism, and straight into socialism. With the help of Ozhegov, this leap occurred.
The first dictionary that was published in another country, not in Russia, was in China. China, in the post-war years, has truly treated the Russian language with great care and immense affection. Indeed, the Soviet Union and its citizens were truly seen as an elder brother. I was very fortunate in China to meet a truly remarkable woman, Elizaveta Pavlovna Kishkina. She was deeply involved in the study of the Russian language, and her major work was the creation of a comprehensive Chinese dictionary that utilized the structure of the Ozhegov dictionary.
Another monumental collaborative work is the Dictionary of Pushkin's Language.
Ozhegov was on the team compiling the dictionary of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. It's a 4-volume dictionary, such a fundamental and very interesting work. Imagine this, to work through all of Pushkin's works, right? Write out all the words he used and create a dictionary. That is, quotes are taken where these words appear, and their meaning is explained, and where they are found in which works.
Quite a few famous poets and writers would come to visit Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov. Zabolotsky was certainly among them, I can confirm that. Platonov was too for sure. And of course the broad perspective that Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov possessed allowed him to host remarkable writers, poets and prominent public figures.
Now, just imagine, I already told you the sheer number of various commissions he was a member of, didn't I? This clearly indicates that his primary work was with people. A great many of them were both scientists and educators.
A cultured man, he was, a truly cultured man. And his cultured nature, his true intellect was not just about him being a highly educated man, or rather not only that, but about him being a human being. First and foremost, a human with a capital H. Only a true human, a real patriot of our country, could create such a dictionary.
I know he truly loved me, my father, he was a man who really knew how to love, That's a rare gift, by the way. And this capacity for love spread to everyone around him. You can really feel him, just like butter. When he passed away, I was just 6 years old. He left his life very unexpectedly, didn't he?
Absolutely unexpected.
He just collapsed while he was working. And that was the end of it. He passed away suddenly. He was 64 years old.
Just before his death, Ozhegov said that the dictionary needed to be updated, supplemented, changed. Life moves forward, language changes, and then the dictionary began to be published under the names of Ozhegov and Shvedova. So if we open it, it says it's revised and supplemented. This means it's a living dictionary.
I know that Tornoi foreigners who came to study here in Russia and previously in the Soviet Union learned Russian from Ozhegov's dictionary, the definitions of words. Words, they are so clear, so precise, well, without a doubt, you can learn the language even without consulting any other books.
In the contemporary world, there is a certain aggression directed at the Russian language. And if we Russian-speaking people understand this language, truly appreciate its value and carefully preserve it, then based on my experience, speaking with colleagues, today the Russian language in many countries literally needs to be guarded and protected. When colleagues arrive from abroad, their first stop is, of course, the bookstores. My Georgian colleagues recently admitted Russian language learning books aren't imported there. Therefore, we can only privately bring in an Ozhegov Russian dictionary.
The world learns Russian from Ozhegov's dictionaries, like the Japanese.
I was a postgraduate student at MSLU, and currently I am in my third year of studies. My major is linguistics. When I was 17, back then I was a high school student, and I attended an open day at one university. There I had the chance to speak with my future Russian language teacher, and this really piqued my interest. When I first interned in Moscow, I bought Ozhegov's dictionary, and I've used this dictionary on numerous occasions. It's a single volume dictionary, and that's was also very convenient for me. Someday I still want to return to Japan and teach Russian there.
I had a meeting today with some young people, students who came here from Côte d'Ivoire, and I had one particular question for them. Why did you decide to come to Tver? He says, because they speak Russian here. And the second one said, I want to train as a Russian language teacher so I can teach this language back home in my own country. Because in my country there's a great interest in Russian. And that's truly a fact. Africa is now actively going to Russia to study Russian. The Chinese also have a great interest in Russian now.
I studied Russian, the Russian language in China, and since childhood I've been deeply interested in Russian culture and the Russian language itself. In China, there are more than 80 universities that offer Russian language programs. I began my study of Russian in 2016. So at first I used an electronic dictionary, but then I realized that it wasn't very helpful. That's why, with the help of Ozhegov's dictionary from the 18th year, yes, I found that it contains many explanations and numerous examples, which are very helpful to us. The role of the Russian language, it is growing at this very moment because Russia is a great country.
The Russian language, as one of the world's most prominent and well-known languages, is very popular in our country, in Serbia. I started studying Russian from the 4th grade of elementary school. I found it to be very interesting. I always buy dictionaries. Every birthday I was given Russian dictionaries. Afterwards I bought Ozhegov's dictionary at the book fair in Belgrade. I have such a thick Ozhegov's stress dictionary. In my case, studying Russian wasn't mercenary or commercial at all. It was just some kind of love, like mother's milk. My ancestors always thought well of Russia, and perhaps that was the impetus.
In the choice of language.
Another nuance often overlooked. Such dictionaries are, in fact, the only linguistic link for those forced to emigrate from their country, as was the case with the family of the famous philosopher Zinoviev. They were expelled from the USSR in the late 70s.
For us, for people who found themselves exiled from the Soviet Union on August 6th, 1978, we were expelled from the Soviet Union. For us, the loss of this linguistic environment, our daughter, who was born to us there in Germany, for me, the most important task was to preserve this Russian language. Thanks to that same Ozhegov, you understand.
Thanks to Ozhegov himself, I understood the value this holds for us, for our culture, for the intellectual growth our youngest daughter, now thank God 36, would grow in. Emigration is always bad. It's bad for the person who breaks away to another world, hoping to solve their problems, their domestic ones.
He won't solve his domestic problems. Emigration means burning oneself away from one's own native culture. They were losing their native Russian language.
Undoubtedly, language functions as a significant lever of influence. The Soviet Union systematically educated its populace within the framework of a vast state, and it brought culture to many different nations. Many people from Latin America, Africa, and various other European countries specifically came here, traveling great distances to enroll and study at Soviet universities. These individuals became the essential carriers and promoters of Russian culture throughout the entire world.
Despite the fact that almost every Russian knows Ozhegov's name, the memory of this outstanding linguist is preserved only in his dictionaries. No monuments, no plaques, not even in his historical homeland in the Tver region.
I would certainly hope that in Sergei Ivanovich's homeland a monument would be erected, a truly classic one, because he himself was a truly classic person. And of course, I really want the house where he was born and lived to be fully restored, and in that house it would be possible to establish such an Ozhegov Center, that is a cultural and educational center, not only for those who reside here in Kuvshinovo, but also for all those visiting this place, for tourists.
Sergei Ozhegov's architect granddaughter followed her father's path. She now teaches at a leading architectural university, and with students designs a space in Kuvshinovo to immortalize her grandfather's memory.
Masha is doing the city center, the very heart, right? That's her part then, right? And she's doing exactly what's around the people's house. Yes, Yulia Mikhailovna Kuvshinova's. The main thing is the installation of a monument to Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov, and the decision to install that monument.
The main idea here is the creation of a space that exists completely outside of time, meaning it's not clear exactly when this monument was erected. The base of the monument is proposed to be made from Staritsa stone, which has been quarried for many centuries in the Tver region.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting solution.
My multi-purpose amphitheatre.
The main idea is that this amphitheater should be used throughout the entire year.
There could be some, yes, various events related to the Russian language and so forth, because I understand that the city plans to connect its future with the Russian language in some way, yes, and there are already people who are quite interested in this.
A dictionary lives as long as it's relevant, and this is the case of Ozhegov's work. For more than 70 years, every resident of our country has used it.
A huge number, to something like 30 reprints currently. Every time, by the way, at the core of modern editions, these are always debates. They always generate such discussions about what is considered the norm and generally what should be included, what linguistic corpus should be represented in his Ozhegov dictionary. And every time it's useful.
Such is the discussion. But this dictionary, it still remains necessary.
Of course, one of the ongoing debates is, should we add new words that are now entering our everyday language into dictionaries like these? Is there a place for all these zoomers, crushes, and vibes in such a serious work? It seems they've really settled into our daily conversations for quite some time. Perhaps they should indeed be included here, but no.
I think that Ozhegov, who generally tried to preserve the pure literary Russian language, beautiful and powerful, would not have recorded this kind of youth slang that is present here, because it is like the movement of time. In the 60s, there was also slang, but it wasn't recorded. Those very same weakling dandy expressions. How is that even possible? That was back in my younger days, wasn't it? Back then it was all about the grandparents' teeth in a glass, shoelaces in a glass, pardon me. And then there was that phrase, can a stiliaga really play jazz? I mean, that's also gone now.
Here, it will pass.
In our age of information technology, we often shorten words, interpret them as we wish, sometimes using them incorrectly. And look how carefully Sergey Ivanovich treats his native language in his dictionary. That's beyond all praise. Such an attitude, even if he interprets some borrowed word, he writes, it has already become Russian.
Today, there's more and more talk about Russia needing a new dictionary. Our language contains many polluting elements, specifically for the language itself. So what exactly do we mean by polluting elements in our understanding? It's a large abundance of foreign words that they have no direct equivalents and have never been present in our language, as this is very dangerous for the language because the language loses its identity. And it is precisely through dictionaries that we can preserve this, by filtering out those polluting words.
In the last 4 years, we've adopted many laws to defend the Russian language. One of them was a law that obliged our government to create a registry for the Russian language, a platform where our entire vocabulary would be housed. And by the end of this year, 2025, we will have such a platform and 8 dictionaries of the Russian language. His legacy lives on, it develops. What makes the Russian language so great and good? It's that foreign words that enter it, it captures them and transforms them into Russian words. That's why our Russian language is great and has survived many, as they now say, invasions, right? I don't think the Russian language is truly threatened with destruction by Anglicisms. It is powerful. It is a very, so to speak, optimistic and strong-willed language because it belongs to an optimistic and strong-willed people. And so Sergei Ivanovich Ozhegov was one of the best representatives of such a people.